Now, next game I want to show you is also very interesting. It was played in U.S. Championship in 1993 against aspiring young talent uh, Tal Shaked. He made the Grandmaster known that year, and he was very strong player. I think he's currently retired from chess, and he was full scale, started studying in university. And anyway, e4 d5, ed knight f6. Now this is very, very interesting and very typical for positions kind from the opening of center counter or Caro-Can or French, where black has spring counter position, where it seemed like very tight and less space, but all of a sudden position opens and becomes very sharp. So that's exactly what was in this position. After knight f6, d4, knight takes d5, c4, knight b6, knight f3. Well, I have to tell you that knight f3 is necessary move here because knight c3 is not nearly as good. After knight c3 and e5, black is guaranteed to have at least equal position. Winning a pawn is giving black tremendous compensation after bishop f5 and castling long. This is known already, games been played with very good results for black. And going d5 also result to bishop b4, and black starts quick assault on d5 pawn after c6. Well, anyway, knight f3 was played, which is correct move. Bishop g4, c5, and knight d7. This is theoretical move. It's better than putting knight on d5 because black is going to have big difficulties creating counterplay after knight d5. There were games with knight d5 and nothing good happened for black. So knight d7 is the move. Bishop c4, creating a threat of bishop takes f7. For example, if we go something like c6, bishop takes f7 is nearly winning for white, followed by queen takes g4. So e6 must be played, and after h3, bishop h5, bishop e3, bishop e7, knight c3. Well, here black castled and white castled, and I went b6. That's what I was aiming on, and perhaps the best continuation would have been d5 for white, or maybe even c takes b, a takes b, and d5. But anyway, what they did was g4, bishop g6, and white decided to hang on their space advantage. b4, c6, a3, a5. This was very well played game by black, and I will show you how, so with such a passive pieces that black has now, they created some very powerful attack, because white has to worry about a3, b4, c5, d4. This pawn structure, they have to worry about their king. Black's task is a lot easier to develop quickly. So they are preoccupied with development rather than looking at white's weaknesses. They cannot do that. You never start active operations and creating threats and before you are fully developed. And this is my strong belief, and that's what I'm always trying to tell people of all levels. I would never start any activity before I fully develop my pieces. So after a3, a5, queen e2. Now we go b5. You see how black is gaining time on a quick development now. b5, bishop a2. Knight a6. It's interesting that if bishop b3, it's going to be impossible to protect the b4 pawn without playing knight a2, which is pretty bad position for knight. So that's why bishop a2 was played. And after knight a6, queen b2. That's another piece placed on terrible position. Big piece like queen protects little tiny pawn on b4. Knight c7. Now black wants to go knight f6 and knight d5. So white timely stops it by playing knight e5, attacking the c6, black forced to take. And here it's time. Black has developed the knight. Knight potentially will go to d5. And f6 is very strong move. White's king is not secured. Rook a to d1, knight d5. And here white is in grave danger. Taking is real bad, and not taking is not any better because black is trying to play fe and open all their pieces. So white started desperate counterplay on the opposite side of the board. After a4, ab, knight takes d5, ed, ab, and this is very important in between move. So you see, white thinks that they broke up through black's center because if pawn takes, rook takes d5, otherwise they're gonna take on c6. But after queen a5 attacking the bishop on a2, forcing bishop to move to b1, and queen takes b5. Black held the center, and now they already have an extra pawn and practically winning position. Bishop takes g6, hg, ef. Bishop takes f6, and on queen c2, g5. Desperation attempt of creating some play for white is h4. Well, it's bad for white, so it's a natural reaction that they try to complicate the position. Gh, and after g5, bishop c3, queen g6, queen e2. You see queen is coming through g4 now. Queen e2, queen e6 check, king h8. White is absolutely lost here. Queen h3 was played, queen h5, and after f4, rook a3. You see now the deadly threat is d4 and to open. See the queen on the same horizontal as the rook on a3, and after f5 and bishop e5, black simply resigned. There is a d4 threat. There is a possibly queen takes g5 threat. For example, on move like this, we maybe go queen takes g5, and then bishop takes, rook takes h3. White's position is totally hopeless, and my opponent resigned. I think it's very typical position where space disadvantage, a position all of a sudden opens widely, and you find your opponent not prepared for sudden changes, and White's position collapsed here. This is very typical for these types of position. Let me give you a little summary of for the games we have already seen. So in e4, d5, ed, knight f6 variation. Now, of course, there are a bunch of different continuations. We did not cover them all because we cannot have one game on every variation. But in the main system, d4, knight d5, knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2, knight c6. If white castles, this is probably the most expected move, but not as sharp as c4 and not as ambitious as c4. If they castle, what do you have to do? Now, when you go e6, then you develop your bishop on e7, and remember, don't just play this position like a Caro-Kann. So you have to have, that's why your knight is on c6. So you should play this position. This is like the most common setup for white. Well, we didn't look at those games because those games, if we start analyzing those games, they are very slow developing and not much to learn by looking at the game. That's why I want to give you the main pointers. Well, when you castle and white plays something like knight d2, you have to hope for counterplay in the center. So play something like bishop f6, not right away because knight e4 will be possible. Rook e8, queen d7, on some move h3. Suppose white goes here. Queen d7, then rook a to d8, and play for counterplay with e5. That's the difference between space advantage white has in this opening between space advantage in Caro-Kann. In Caro-Kann, you basically sit back and wait what white is going to do for the rest of the game. What I'm saying about Caro-Kann, I mean this type of position. This type of positions, when white develops something, this type of positions with pawns on c6 and e6, it's very difficult for black to play for e5. Well, it's nearly impossible. I hardly have seen any games played with that. Here, the center counter, the whole opening is designed for a counterplay. Now, let's look at some, I selected some games and the way you should be thinking about them if white plays a little bit unexpected variations. For example, e4, d5, ed, knight f6, bishop b5, check. Well, it may be unexpected, but it's been played so many times. Bishop d7 and bishop c4. Black cannot capture now pawn on d5. So bishop g4, f3, and the correct move here is bishop c8, and that's exactly what was played. Why bishop c8 and not bishop f5? Well, bishop f5 is not such a good move because after knight c3 and knight d7, white can play g4 and then either g5 with a tempo that black cannot play knight b6 and later on capture this pawn, or even f4 is rather scary because f5 threat. So that's why bishop has to go to c8, and that's what happened. This game was played. Actually, I rarely bring women's games as example. It was played by a lady rated almost 2500, and well, this game just shows you how women can be dangerous not only in life but on a chessboard too. So after bishop c8, knight c3, knight bd7. This is most common play on this variation, knight e2, knight b6, bishop b3. Now, I don't think white should expect to get any advantage in this position. The reason why, although black did play bishop g4, then bishop c8, well, actually bishop d7, g4, and c8, but did they lose really two tempos? Not, of course, because white played bishop from f1 to b5, and then c4, and then b3. And also f3 is played. It kind of it's not a very good position for the f pawn. So black is already doing okay. I have played these positions number of times myself. Well, rather than taking on d5, black played a5. It's also a playable move, but there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking on d5, and that's what I have played in my games. a5, a3, and now a4, bishop a2, knight b takes d5, a5 and a4 hasn't changed much. The knight takes d5, d4, e6, castle, bishop e7. Now, black has absolutely no problems. The light square bishop can be developed via b6 and bishop b7, and dark square bishop of whites doesn't have any active squares to go to. Black is doing just fine. So knight e4 was played. After knight e4, b5 was played. Well, the idea now of knight e4 is to go c4, somehow to gain space. And I like b5 move. It kind of secures the knight's position on d5. Knight f4, bishop b7, queen d3, and black simply castled. After bishop d2 and exchange of knights on f4, bishop d5 was... Bishop d5 is one move, and that's what played. Knight d5 was okay as well. Bishop d5 is what black wants to exchange light square bishops and establish control on light squares. So after bishop d5, bishop takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop g3, queen d7, rook a d1, knight b6. Well, black does have unconditional control on light squares on queen side, but white still has a little more space. Position is comfortable for black. That's all I can tell you. I don't know if black has any advantage, but it's very comfortable position. Queen c3. Here, white's play is a little awkward. Queen e1, queen c6, but it's low developing position and moves will not change much. Queen e2 and knight b6 was played. The move I like here is queen c4. You know, even if white wins a pawn, black later goes rook b7, has very good pressure on the queen side. Well, of course, queen c4 does not have to be played. Knight b6 was played, knight c3, and after bishop takes a3. White should never have allowed this shot. What white should have done here is to play c3 to admit completely that they cannot contest black on the light squares on queen side and try to somehow concentrate on a king side and to create some play. Black does have all these knight squares for queen side, but no concrete plan how to take advantage of them. Knight c3 makes white's case critical. Bishop takes a3. I don't think white overlooked it, but they went for a position they shouldn't have gone for. Queen takes c3, queen takes b5, queen takes a3, bishop takes c7, and knight d5. Black has a pass pawn, very strong position, bishop g3, rook f c8. Well, in this position, by playing bishop g3, white allowed knight c3, which doesn't really do much because of simple queen d3. So black did not play queen c3, but knight c3, but black already has very strong pass pawn and centralized knight. Black has very, very big advantage. What happened is rook fc8, rook a1, queen b4, queen d3, queen c4. I want to stop at this point because strategically black is absolutely winning. They went on to win the game, but not the shortest way game continued another 30 moves, which it shouldn't have been. It should have ended much sooner. But play in the opening clearly shows you what happens if white chooses to play in the early stage game bishop b5 and bishop c4. So what do you do here? Go bishop g4, bishop c8, and concentrate on winning your d5 pawn back. That's exactly what happened, and there is no advantage for white. Now, I want to switch your attention to a different center counter. Center counter where after ed, black chooses to play queen takes d5. We're going to come back to knight f6 variation close to the end, but we're going to come back to knight f6 variation the way you shouldn't play it, the way you shouldn't play knight f6 variation. So, but right now we gonna show you the things that okay to do and you can do. Queen takes d5 is very, very playable variation. And has the reputation of very stable variations. On a queen takes d5, knight c3, now the queen a5 is the main move, and it's been played for many, many decades. But lately, to add to the value of center counter and especially to queen takes d5 variation, there is another move, queen d6, that started getting more and more attention of strong players. But we're not going to cover this now, so let's go with queen a5. And this is the game was played between 2,300 and 2,500 players. It's high enough level for you to pay attention and to see what came out of this opening. Okay, after queen a5, knight f3, knight f6, d4, c6, and knight e5. That's the way I play when I have to play against center counter, queen takes d5 variation. And black played most popular move, bishop e6, bishop f5. We're gonna see a game played with that. Well, actually there is a possibility of going even g4, but bishop e6 is the main move. What's wrong with bishop f5 is white goes g4, and on bishop e4 they will go f3, and if bishop goes back to g6, then h4 creates some problems for black. So what happened in this game is bishop e6. This is the main variation, and it's even been played on a highest possible level in a world championship match between Anand and Kasparov. Well, bishop e6 was played, and after bishop e6, white has choices. I don't think bishop c4 is the best choice for white, and that's what was played. When I play, well, if I play knight c4, and that doesn't mean this is the best move, that's what I like the best, and that's why I think that bishop c4 is not the best choice. Knight c4, probably the best thing to do for black is to take the knight and go e6 and try to play passive but solid position of a Caro-Kann type, because when queen is hanging on queen c7, white may play queen f3, and they're about to get another tempo on black's queen. So black should take here and quickly go on with development. But none of this happened, so let's go to bishop c4 move. Now bishop takes c4, knight takes c4, and black played queen d8. I like this move. I like this move better than queen c7, although queen stands better on c7. I don't know for how long, because bishop f4 is coming still. So queen d8 was played, bishop g5, e6, queen d3, bishop e7, and let me tell you about this pawn structure. This is exactly Caro-Kann type of pawn structure. But this position is better than you could get from Caro-Kann, better for black. The reason? Because white doesn't have a good control in the center. How come? White has knights on c4 and c3. What I need to be doing is to play c4 to get control on critical central squares. But what black can do now, but since white has two knights on c3 and c4, this is rather difficult to do. And black can play knight d7 and quickly c5, getting quick counterplay in the center. That didn't happen in this game, but nevertheless, let's see what did. Okay, after bishop e7, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6, and knight e4. But this is absolutely harmless attempt for white. What are they trying to do? To go knight d6 check? Well, obviously black is gonna castle, and black did, and white castled, and now black goes knight d7. White's space advantage is absolutely worthless in this position. And let me explain you why. This is very important to understand correctly. When you have space advantage, you should try slowly squeeze your opponent. In general, it's the best strategy. Here, we already have two sets of minor pieces exchanged. And black has clear play. White cannot squeeze black. Black has clear plan. Kings castled on the opposite sides. So b5, a5, and start pushing all these pawns on a queen side. Of course, white can do the same, going h4 and g4. But then, where is the space advantage? It's not valid factor in this position. So position is very leveled, and white has no advantage, in my opinion, at all. f4 was played, queen c7, knight e5. It looks very active for white, but it's perfectly good position for black. Rook a to d8, queen e3, and bishop e7. Here, knight takes d7 was played, rook takes d7, rook d3. Okay, white is preparing rook to swing, maybe at some point, to the king side. But black has all pieces mobilized, and black is doing real well here. And rook h2 d1, b5. White cannot afford to swing their pieces to king side because d4 pawn needs some attention. If somehow white goes c3, this opens for black an opportunity to go c5 or b4 to create clear counterplay on queen side. So what happened after b5, knight c5? Well, black easily could have taken, which would have led to a draw, but rook d5 is a better move. Black is ambitious now, and for a reason. And now a5. So white, indication of knight c5 and knight e4, it's a good indication that white is out of plan. They don't know what to do. And after a5, g3. Meanwhile, black is keep pushing pawns on the queen side. h4, g3, b4, h4, a4. Rook 1 to d2. That's another waiting move. White has absolutely no plan. Queen a7, potentially getting more control or more attack on a weak d pawn. Queen a7, king d1. It cannot be a good sign, right? It cannot be because white likes its position. If king goes to d1, it can be for one other reason. It cannot be because king wants to come and attack black's king, it can be just to evacuate to safety. King d1, queen a6, king e1, queen c4, b3, ab, and queen a6 back. Now there is a file, there is a weak pawn on d4, and the potential of c5. Black is clearly better. So this game is already did what it's supposed to do. It showed that aimless play for white. None of black's moves, it was very reasonable grandmaster playing with black. They were such a powerful. Black played every move that black played was making common sense. And now black has clear advantage. We don't need to see the whole game. So black eventually went on to win the game.